Take a look at Kyle. Kyle is currently sitting at his table, trying his best to balance his personal budget at the very end of the month. He is well aware of a very clear and unforgiving rule. If he happens to owe the bank money for something like a sofa loan, debt collectors will track him down and find him even 10 years later. The logic is inescapable. If Kyle spends more than he earns, he is simply bankrupt. It is that simple. And then, Kyle opens up his newsfeed and sees a massive number that he simply cannot fit inside his head. The United States national debt has officially crossed the $34 trillion mark. It is not just America. Japan owes twice as much as its entire country is able to produce in a single year. Even the wealthiest countries in the world are currently in debt up to their ears. Kyle freezes in his tracks. He asks himself a very logical question. If everyone in the world owes everyone else, then who is it that we actually owe in the end? Kyle begins to think that maybe we owe all of this money to aliens. Kyle thinks that a national debt is just like his own monthly utility bill for electricity or water. But my friend, let me tell you, this is the greatest and most convincing illusion of modern times. Today, we are going to break down exactly why the world as we know it simply cannot exist without the presence of debt. We will show you why. If all the countries in the world suddenly decided to pay back every single one of their debts and reached a balance of zero, your life would turn into the Stone Age within 24 hours. So get ready for a very hard financial detox. It is time to strip away the myths and see the system for what it really is. Here's the first insight that usually makes Kyle's eye twitch. Money does not grow on trees, and it has not been sitting as gold bars in central bank basements for a long time. In our modern system, every single dollar, every euro, or every hryvnia in Kyle's pocket is someone else's debt. Literally, when a state needs money, it does not just turn on a printing press. It issues bonds. These are clever papers that essentially say, I will pay you this money back with interest later. Banks buy these papers, and only after that transaction do new numbers appear on accounts within the system. If all debts in the world were to disappear tomorrow, money would simply evaporate. Kyle is holding not a symbol of wealth, but a symbol of someone else's obligation. The modern economy is not an exchange of goods. It is a giant, interconnected network of promises. And as long as Kyle and millions of others continue to believe in these promises, the entire system keeps spinning. Kyle thinks, okay, if the state can just write notes, why cannot I simply write, I owe $1 million on a napkin and buy a Tesla? The difference is that behind a state's note is the fundamental right to collect taxes from people just like Kyle. National debt is not about how much you owe. It is about how much you are trusted by the rest of the world. The United States has such a giant debt because the entire world believes they can always collect enough taxes or print enough papers to cover the interest payments. Debt for a country is not a bottomless pit. It is actually the fuel for the entire economic engine. The only real question is where this engine is going. Whether it builds new technologies that will eventually make Kyle richer, or if it simply burns Kyle's future just to pay for populism and free promises today. Kyle once heard about Ponzi schemes and laughed at how naive people could be. But now he begins to realize that the entire global financial system works in a very similar way. To pay off old debts, states issue even more new bonds. It is exactly like taking out a brand new loan to close an old one, but doing it at the staggering level of trillions. Why has this not collapsed? It is because states have an infinite stream of new participants. That is us. As long as Kyle works, pays his taxes, and eventually gives birth to new taxpayers, the pyramid has a constant resource. This is, in essence, a tax on future generations. Kyle was born with a debt he did not choose for himself, but which he will spend his entire life paying for with his own hard labor. This is the heavy price we all pay for the illusion of stability that we enjoy today. Kyle often sees headlines claiming that China owns a huge share of United States debt. He imagines how China could simply shut down America for its debts. In reality, what we are seeing is a high-stakes version of financial game theory. It is exactly like two people holding each other by the throat while dangling over a deep abyss. If China starts to sharply dump United States debts, the value of the dollar will fall significantly. But at the same time, the Chinese economy, which lives off exports to the United States, would effectively die the very next day. Big countries are like Siamese twins. They may hate each other, but they are sewn together permanently by a heavy debt chain. As long as this delicate balance holds, Kyle can continue to buy his goods at the store. But this balance is becoming increasingly fragile, with every single new trillion added to the pile. Kyle has noticed that his groceries are getting more and more expensive every single month. He tends to blame the stores or perhaps the logistics companies. But in reality, this is the secret mechanism of debt repayment. When a state cannot raise taxes because Kyle would go to a protest, it simply devalues the money instead. If inflation is 10%, then the real value of the state's debt also falls by 10%. This is the perfect robbery, carried out without a single weapon. You are returned the exact same numbers on paper, but for these numbers you can buy much less than before. Inflation is a tax on the poor that allows governments to keep their debt pyramid operational. Kyle's savings are a sacrifice made so the system does not stop. Kyle looks at these trillions and begins to think that maybe he can live in debt too. After all, if the whole world is doing it, why shouldn't he? But right here lies the main and most dangerous deception. A state has the power to print money, but Kyle absolutely cannot. When Kyle takes out a loan for a brand new iPhone, he becomes a part of the financial food chain at its very bottom. The entire financial system is specifically built to pump resources away from those who consume on credit and move them toward those who own assets. Kyle pays interest, which then becomes profit for the banks, which the banks then use to buy government bonds. Kyle is the actual fuel that keeps this whole mechanism running. Your personal debt is a heavy chain, while the national debt is a sophisticated tool of power. It is incredibly important for Kyle to understand exactly which side of the financial barricades he is standing on. Often, Kyle hears populists and politicians shouting from their podiums, saying that we should all just cancel every single debt. Let us take a moment to imagine that exact scenario. If all debts were to disappear tomorrow morning, Kyle's banking app would show a balance of 0. His savings would completely vanish because those numbers were simply the bank's debt to him. Pension funds, insurance policies, and even monthly salaries. Every single thing in the modern economy relies on a massive, delicate system of mutual promises. Without debt, the modern world would simply stop moving altogether. It is very much like gravity. It can crush you if you fall, but without it there would be no planets and no sense of order. The real question is not how to destroy debt, but rather how to keep it from destroying you. Kyle no longer wants to be just fuel for the machine. He starts investing in the same exact tools that the wealthy own. He buys shares in businesses and various assets that grow much faster than inflation. He understands that if he cannot beat the system, he must become a part of it at the level of an owner, not just a consumer. Kyle now sees the news about the national debt not with horror or fear, but with a sense of analytical calm. He knows which way the wind is blowing. Instead of trying to stop the storm, he builds a windmill. His life changes because he has finally started playing by the rules of owners, rather than the rules of debtors. Kyle has walked this long and difficult path. Now, after everything he has seen and analyzed, he finally knows the absolute truth. The world is in debt, because debt is the essential lifeblood of the modern global economy. It is what keeps everything moving, growing, and breathing. You can choose to complain about the inherent injustice of the system, or you can learn to use this powerful knowledge to your own advantage. In this reality, you are either the one who pays interest, or you are the one who receives it. The system simply did not provide a third option for any of us. Kyle has made his choice. And you? Thank you for being with us during this financial detox. Subscribe to understand the language of money. See you when you are one step closer to your freedom.